Welcome everyone to the 2025-26 new coordinator training from the California Department of Education. My name is Paul Valencia and I will be your producer for today's webinar, which is a focus on managing users. Before we get started, we're going to address a few housekeeping items. First, all participants are muted. Therefore, in order to submit your questions during the presentation, you may use the Q&A feature in Zoom. Please do not confuse that with the chat feature for this webinar. Actually, for the webinar series, we will only be using the Q&A feature. Second, a copy of today's resource guide was sent to you via email. If you haven't received it or you need to access it again, the link has been placed in the chat. Oh, thank you, Nikki. And click on the link. It will take you to a folder where you can download the guide or make a copy into your own Google Drive. And just be aware that there's no edit access from the link we shared, so you'll have to make your own copy, okay? And third, at the end of the webinar, you're going to be directed to a post-training evaluation. And if you could please take a few minutes to provide some feedback, we would really appreciate it. It helps future trainings. And lastly, we will be recording today's presentation, and an archive of this presentation will be available to view on the upcoming and on-demand trainings webpage on the CAASPP and ELPAC website. And with that, I would like to introduce today expert panelists. We're very fortunate to have with us Nikki Antonovich, my colleague from Sacramento County Office of Education, and Stephen Bartlett from Los Angeles County Office of Education.
That is bright. Hello, everybody. My name's Nikki Antonovich. Great to be with you today. Let's talk really quickly about our agenda. Today's agenda aligns with our success criteria. So by the end of today, these are the things that you will be able to do. You're going to be able to list the roles and responsibilities within an LEA or a local educational agency. You're going to be able to assign roles to different staff in the Test Operations Management System, or TOMS. You'll identify the forms needed to maintain test security, and we're going to get you answers to all of your questions. Now, before we jump into the actual content, we want to take a few minutes to talk through this series of trainings, these new coordinator trainings for 2025-26. A few years ago, we transitioned from some full-day sessions to a more flexible model of webinars throughout the year, providing asynchronous resources across the year for just-in-time information. This format allows us to deliver personalized support and valuable insight to coordinators exactly when you need it. And we're hoping you like this new webinar format. I'm seeing some hearts. I love it. Here's what is included in the new coordinator training. We have some asynchronous, on-demand, pre-work pieces. The first piece of that is a webinar that was recorded. It is about resources, both like document resources and agency resources and website resources available to support you in your role. And then we have a recorded webinar all about your role as the coordinator of assessments. Links to those video playlists are in your resource guide. We also have some additional pre-work. We have some Assessment 101 or Introduction to the Assessment video. So if you're brand new and you need to know about Smarter Balanced or CAASPP or the alternates or ELPAC, we've got a video that covers the who, what, when, why, and how of each assessment. And then at the end of the year in May, we're linking you to some California Educator Reporting System or CERS trainings that will be taking place that tell you how to get access to your summative assessment data. And new this year, we have new coordinator convenings. They're happening in September. They are 3 in-person meetings throughout the state, 1 north, 1 central, 1 south in California. They are designed to support brand new CAASPP and ELPAC coordinators. We're bringing you guys together, letting you meet each other, hear from the experts, and build your networks and get some tools. So we're very excited about all of that. And then we have the new coordinator support itself, the webinars. So this is a series of monthly webinars designed to give just-in-time information. You've got the full list of sessions in the resource guide, but here's what's coming up. We are here today in June. It is still June, right? It's June. And for manage users. Next month in July, we're going to talk about receiving results. And then in August, we're going to cover the assessment systems and the test operations management system, or TOMS. In addition to all of that fun stuff, the new coordinator training umbrella, both the pre-work and the webinars, we have some standalone resources for you as well. Again, links are in the resource guide and Paul is putting that link into the chat. The first are the coordinator checklists. There's one checklist for CAASPP, one checklist for ELPAC, and checklists for different roles. So there's a checklist for you, the LEA coordinator. There are checklists for site coordinators. This is an extensive list of all the tasks and activities that are part of your role. They are organized by month when they are most likely to occur, but they are created as a Word document so that you can go in and organize if you do things in different months or have local tasks that you want to add or things that are not your responsibility that you want to take out. You can absolutely customize those coordinator checklists. And the second one is the coordinator how-to hub. And I'm actually going to pull that up really quick. So the Coordinator How-To Hub you access through the CAASPP and ELPAC website at caaspp-elpac.org. You go to the Training and Communication tab of the ribbon, and it is right here, Coordinator How-To Hub. This web page is a collection of all existing how-to resources. It's organized by time frame. So you'll see here spring and summer, and then summer, early fall. And then within each time frame by topic. So manage users, manage student group in SIRS. And if you're stuck on how to do something, you come to this web page, you pull up the time frame, the topic, and all of the how-to resources are there, as well as vignettes of experienced coordinators from 2 small districts, 2 mediums, 2 larges, 2 charters, and a COE, telling you how they do their process, what they think through, how they set it up. So if you're ever looking for resources, that Coordinator How-To Hub is a great place to go. I see a quick question in the chat about when the convenings will be. I'm going to ask Paul to pop those dates into the chat, but we are sending out emails to coordinators about registration for those. All right, let's get into the content. We are going to talk about understanding the different roles and responsibilities of assessment coordination. And we are going to start on the CAASPP side of the house with the different user roles available, again, in TOMS, which stands for the Test Operations Management System. So anyone who needs to complete a task in the testing system is going to need a TOMS account. In order to get a TOMS account, you have to be assigned a TOMS role. And each user role is designated a specific set of permissions, and that determines your access to the various assessment systems. So on the CAASPP side of the house, the roles are superintendent, obviously assigned to the superintendent. There's the LEA level CAASPP coordinator, that's you guys. There's a site level CAASPP coordinator, so one for each of the different sites to administer at that level. The test administrator, the test examiner for CAASPP. There's a role for interim assessment administrator only. There's the educator district, educator test site, and educator roster roles. Those are more for accessing results and less for administering tests and secure materials because it doesn't have access to those. And then there's that tools for teachers only role. So anyone who needs access to tools for teachers but doesn't need a full assessment coordination role. Now, important note, these user roles govern access to the features within TOMS and other systems. Again, like we said, SIRS, the California Educator Reporting System, where we're getting results for summative and interim assessments. So for more detailed information about the roles and the access, there's the TOMS user guide in the manuals library, and that link is in your resource guide. Now for the ELPAC, it's similar to the roles for CAASPP and very similar in terms of, again, if anyone needs to complete a task in a testing system, they're going to need a TOMS role. And again, that means someone needs to be assigned a TOMS role so that they have access to the various systems. So for ELPAC, it's looking pretty similar up top, right? We've got the superintendent, the LEA level ELPAC coordinator, your site level ELPAC coordinators. ELPAC has a test examiner, not a test administrator and a test examiner, just a test examiner for ELPAC. There's still that IA administrator only role. And then we have some LS data entry staff roles and LS correspondence administrator roles. And then again, the same, the educator district, educator test site, educator roster roles. Those are for accessing results in SIRS and not for administering tests and not for secure materials. And that tools for teachers only role. So similar, but some differences between CAASPP and ELPAC. But let's dig into them. Let's go through these roles one by one. So the superintendent is where we're going to start. This role is automatically assigned to the LEA superintendent or charter school administrators if you are a charter school. These are the people who are listed in the California School Directory. And this role has the following responsibilities and permissions. They are going to assign and designate you, the LEA coordinator. That is done by the superintendent. That's why they have a role in TOMS. They also can remove those permissions. So if staff changes at the LEA coordinator level, the superintendent's going to designate someone new and remove permission and access from people who are no longer in that role. They're going to designate one LEA coordinator as the primary coordinator for CAASPP, one primary coordinator for ELPAC. Additional LEA level folks can be designated, but there's one primary person. Now, only the superintendent and the primary LEA coordinator can assign that LEA coordinator role to others. So that's why this is very important to know who your primary person is. And if the superintendent does not designate a primary coordinator, that the first user assigned to that role is going to be automatically designated as primary. The superintendent will also have access to completion status reports in TOMS, assessment results in SIRS. Again, that's the California Educator Reporting System for all of the students in the LEA. And the superintendent can designate user roles at other levels too for both the current and upcoming school years. And then we have the LEA level coordinator role. So as an LEA CAASPP for ELPAC coordinator, that's you have many roles and responsibilities related to planning and preparing and supporting testing. The major responsibilities are knowing all about the state laws and regulations, and this means being aware of changes related to assessment. And these are usually found in the federal Title V regulations. But you've got lots of other things to do too, such as maintaining the security of assessments and their materials, informing your site coordinators about their responsibility, especially around those secure materials. You're going to be designating other LEA coordinators and site coordinators, training and supporting site coordinators, all the way from planning and preparing stages through the reporting of results. You're going to be preparing and training and supporting both in-person and remote testing, depending on your LEA. You're preparing and managing the technology that's needed for testing. You're going to be communicating with key interest holders, including letting them know when initial information is available, as well as updating them throughout the testing administration. Accessing LEA reports, storing those locally as needed, reporting results and understanding the use of results accurately. And you are the main point of contact for your LEA's success agent, who's going to support you throughout the year. And as we're going to talk about here on the next slide, one of your key responsibilities is designating those site coordinators who are going to help manage testing at the site level. So for the site coordinator role, again, you, the LEA coordinator, will need to identify who the site coordinator is at each school because you are going to be setting them up in the Test Operations Management System, or TOMS. Now, I want to clarify that I'm not suggesting that you are going to randomly select someone from each site to be the site coordinator. However, we're encouraging you to collaborate with the leadership team and establish a systematic approach to identifying a suitable candidate and setting those roles up in TOMS. You need to know who this person is at each one of your sites. Now, each school site will have at least one site coordinator for assessments, and their duties involve collaborating with the LEA coordinator to establish testing administration procedures. Site coordinators have the highest permission level at the site. And again, they're automatically going to have access to the California Educator Reporting System, or SIRS, which is the repository for all summative and interim assessment results. And they're going to have unique capabilities within TOMS that other user roles do not have. They're going to be able to add users, upload accessibility resources, and various other functions. All right. Now we're getting into like the nitty-gritty of test administration. So again, on the CAASPP side of the house, we have test administrators and test examiners. CAASPP test examiners, or TEs as we like to call them, administer the California alternate assessments, as well as the general assessments. They can administer both. Test examiners, or TEs, will need to be set up early in the year because that CAA for Science window opens in September. Now, according to Ed Code, a test administrator is an employee or contractor of the LEA or NPS who has signed a CAASPP test security affidavit and received training to administer the CAASPP tests. That's the test administrator. They're administering the general assessments. They do not have access to administer the alternate assessments. TAs, general assessments. Test examiners, TEs, administer the alternate assessments. And according to Ed Code, a test examiner is an employee or contractor of the LEA or NPS who has received training to administer the California alternate assessments. We call those the CAAs, and they're certificated or licensed. So test examiners should be familiar with the student and their mode of communication because they're administering those alternate assessments. Now, if you have staff that need to administer both the CAAs, the alternate assessments, and the general assessments, you're going to want to set them up as a test examiner. This will allow them to administer both sets of tests. And if you'll remember from earlier, I mentioned that the ELPAC only has the one role. It's the test examiner role. And for ELPAC, a test examiner administers both the ELPAC and the alternate ELPAC. There's no distinction between the alternate and the general like there is for CAASPP. So an ELPAC test examiner is an employee or contractor of the LEA or non-public, non-secretarian school who has been trained to administer the ELPAC and is a proficient speaker of English as determined by the LEA, who has complete command of pronunciation, intonation, and fluency. So again, this role is assigned by users who are either the LEA coordinator level or site coordinator level. And it can be assigned to a user at the school level only and has the following permissions. So a TE or test examiner for ELPAC can administer the initial ELPAC, initial alternate ELPAC, summative ELPAC, or summative alternate ELPAC, including the audio files to students. They will have control of test session security. They'll be in charge of entry of data and scores into the teacher hand scoring system, or THSS. They may need to print individual initial ELPAC student score reports, or SSRs. They'll have the ability to administer interim assessments. They'll have access to the completion status reports in TOMS. They'll have access to site level reports in that completion status system. They'll have access to assessment results in SIRS, and at the risk of sounding like a broken record, that is the California Educator Reporting System. They will be in charge of entry of scores, like I said, into the teacher hand scoring system, some into the data entry interface, or DEI. And we also want to note that if they're administering the alternate ELPAC, the test examiner should be someone who is familiar with the student and their preferred mode of communication. Excuse me. Okay, the next three roles I want to talk about are these educator roles. So we have educator district, educator site, and educator roster roles. They're less frequently used within TOMS, but they can be very essential to supporting the LEA or site coordinator. So the educator district role allows access to assessment results in SIRS for the entire LEA. The educator site role allows access to assessment results in SIRS for the entire school site. And the educator roster role allows access to assessment results in SIRS for students that have been rostered to that user. So there's like an extra step there of uploading student rosters to that user in SIRS And those are the only students' results that they will have access to. These roles, as I mentioned earlier, are unable to administer any tests, and they do not have access to secure testing materials, such as the directions for administration or DFAs, as we call them. So although these roles start with the word educator, they don't necessarily need to be assigned to a teacher. So I doubt you would want to assign access to the entire district with the educator district role to just one teacher, kind of a thing. But these roles are really meant for people who need this level of access without needing to administer an assessment. So if you have someone who needs access to all of the student results in SIRS for the entire district, doesn't need access to administer the test, doesn't need secure materials, educator district is the way to go. If you have someone who needs access to results for specific student groups in SIRS, and again, doesn't need to administer an assessment, doesn't need access to secure materials, educator roster is the way to go. You assign them that role, you roster students to them in SIRS, and they have everything they need. So there's lots and lots of different ways that you can use these roles. But again, the main components are they don't administer the assessments, they don't have access to secure materials, it gives them access to the results in SIRS. So thinking beyond just the staff who are administering assessments, these roles come in quite handy for people who need access to those results. And that can be a wide variety of folks at your LEA. And then we have the interim assessment only role, or IA administrator only role, and the tools for teachers role. Now the IA administrator only role can administer interim assessments. I mean, that's pretty straightforward, right? They can also score things within the teacher hand scoring system. So if you've administered an interim assessment that has a hand scoring component, they'll be able to go in and complete hand scoring, and they'll be able to access those interim assessment results in SIRS, again, for the students that are rostered to them in SIRS. So again, this role gives access to the California Educator Reporting System, but does not give access to the summative assessments in the test delivery system, just interim assessments in the test delivery system. And a lot of the usage that I hear about this role is in some LEAs, the process is early in the year, set up your teachers and anyone who needs to administer as an IA administrator only. It gives them access to administer the interim assessments, and then they go through the district training, whatever that may be locally for your LEA, to administer summative assessments. And then the summative window opens, and then they're transitioned from that IA administrator only role to a test administrator. It's just one way to stop summatives from actually happening before that they should happen, kind of a thing. So that's like one very common way we hear of this role being used. The last role is this tools for teachers only role. And the tools for teachers only role can access Smarter Balanced tools for teachers. And that's it. I mean, it's in the name, right? Tools for teachers only role. Tools for Teachers is a great website that provides educators with resources for supporting the implementation of the formative assessment process during classroom instruction. This role is ideal for people who don't need access to administer the assessments, don't need access to assessment results, but do want access to this great repository of professional development resources and instructional resources. And we want to note that for Tools for Teachers, any user with an affiliated LEA level or LEA type email address can self-register for Tools for Teachers. So if you're using like a Gmail email address, you can't self-register. You're going to have to be loaded in at that role. But if you have, we're a scoe.net or Stephen is a lacoe.net type of email address, you can self-register for Tools for Teachers. All right, with that, I'm going to pass you on to Stephen.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm .edu. I am going to talk about setting up users in TOMS. So thank you, Nikki. Now that we've discussed the different roles, those permissions, we're going to talk about the process of setting up those users in TOMS. And so you, the LA coordinator, you're going to have options for how you want to add those users. And there's two we primarily see, and that's adding site coordinators and having them add users at their sites, or you can add all of the users for your LEA. Oftentimes, I would at the beginning of the year add all users for the entire LEA, and then the site coordinators will have the responsibility of updating users at their sites as staff retired or as new staff were hired. And the site coordinators were the best equipped to do those updates, as they usually had firsthand knowledge of staff coming or going. And many LEA coordinators will tightly control the update of users so that they can ensure that test examiners have met the proper training requirements prior to allowing them access to the testing platform, especially for the ELPAC. If that's the plan, it's a good idea to at least start all of your potential test examiners and administrators out with a role like IA administrator only role, like Nikki mentioned. And that's going to allow staff into that interim assessment system, as well as SIRS and tools for teachers, any of those lower level roles you get with some of the higher level roles. As far as adding users, they can either be added one by one or in a batch upload. This is exactly what it sounds like. There's an option to add them individually and an option to load them from a file in bulk. We have resources listed on a later slide that walks you through the process for each. And unless you are a very small LEA, chances are you'll do your preliminary upload in bulk and then choose how to manage users throughout the year, either individually or by batch. Another consideration you'll want to make is when to add users to TOMS. Remember, the systems reset every year with the big rollover in July. In the past, ELPAC rollover occurred in July and CAASPP rollover occurred in August. Now, they both occur in July. That means that all users are wiped out during this rollover, and you will need to re-add them every year. So to get ready for the new year and that rollover associated with user wipeout, you're going to want to download your CAASPP and ELPAC LEA user list reports. There will be a separate report for ELPAC and CAASPP if you have both LEA coordinator roles. That will generate a list of all users associated with your LEA for the chosen year. And you'll download a file containing a list of users from the past administration so that you can review them, modify or change user roles, and remove users who are no longer associated with your LEA. When it comes to timelines, we recommend identifying the teachers who will need the test examiner role early in the year. Remember, CAST test examiners, or TEs, administer the California alternate assessments, while test administrators, or TAs, administer the general assessments. TEs will need to be set up early in the year in order to administer the CAA for science, which has a window that opens in September. It's a year-long window. Next, consider the TOMS roles that will be needed during the year. As was mentioned a few slides ago, if your LEA is administering Smarter Balance interim assessments, then you might consider assigning the CAASPP IA administrator only role to any teachers who plan to administer the interims to start the year. This role allows users to administer interim assessments, but not summative assessments. The IA only role could be turned into a TA role later in the year once training for the summative test is complete and the test window is approaching. Planning for these items during the setup process will make changes easier throughout the year. If you've downloaded the list of users from the past administration for review and are going to start users off with the II role, you'll need to pay special attention to the user roles here, as most continuing test administrators will have their end-of-year testing roles from the prior year, potentially requiring adjustment in the Excel spreadsheet prior to that re-upload. Remember, you have two options for adding users to your LEA. You will also need to monitor and adjust TOMS users all year long as staff changes and roles change. When staff leave your LEA, then you will need to deactivate their user roles in TOMS. We don't want anyone retaining access after they have left. And remember, student personally identifiable information, PII, is in TOMS. And on the opposite side, as new staff join your LEA, you will need to add them to TOMS, depending on their job and access needs. While there is a big push to add users at the start of the year, managing users is going to be an ongoing process throughout the year. But what happens if a staff member needs both a CAASPP and ELPAC role? While you will only need to create each Tom's user account once, you will need to assign CAASPP and ELPAC user roles separately. For instance, if a site user oversees both CAASPP and ELPAC at their school, that user will need to be assigned the roles of both site CAASPP coordinator and site ELPAC coordinator. You don't need to load that user twice. Instead, you load them once and then add the additional Tom's user role matching the responsibilities that person is expected to complete so that they have appropriate access in Tom's for both sides. Another consideration is users that need access to multiple schools. Users with the TA or TE role must be tied to a specific school. Test administrators and test examiners who will be testing at multiple sites will need to be given access to each of those sites. I find that there are several circumstances where a TE or TA might have two sites or more assigned to them. For example, many districts will centralize the administration of the initial ELPAC, especially if it's done in the summer months prior to the beginning of the school year for pre-enrolled students. If a group of educators are tasked with completing the initial ELPAC for all schools, they'll need to have a role assigned in each school that they're testing students from. And as a caveat, a centralized strategy might not be appropriate for all assessments or students. For example, when it's a test examiner's responsibility to be familiar with the student and their preferred communication mode, as with the alternate ELPAC. As you're setting up accounts for your users in Tom's, please be sure you communicate that you have set them up so that they know to look for an email with their login information. A no reply email will be sent to the user, so please note that the password link sent to users via email will expire in 30 minutes. So we recommend giving your staff a heads up that this email is going to come. That way they know to be on the lookout for it. But fear not, if your user is unable to access the link prior to its expiration, they can just click the forgot password link and it will resend. So once the users are set up in Tom's, their actual password expires in 90 days. We've talked about adding users. Let's discuss the importance of test security. Let's take this by role. LEA and site coordinators will sign both a security agreement and security affidavit. Both forms are embedded into Tom's and will be completed upon initial Tom's login for each system, ELPAC and CAASPP. So you might sign 4 if you are in both. Test administrators and test examiners are required to sign a security affidavit. Please communicate to your TAs and TEs that they will need to log into the Tom system at least once before testing to sign this form. Otherwise, they will not be able to access summative test sessions. If you get troubleshooting calls about users only being able to see interim assessments, it's because they have not yet logged into Tom's and signed the security affidavit. I'm going to pause and say this again because it's important. During testing time, we hear about TAs and TEs who cannot see the tests they need to administer, and this is because they have never logged into Tom's to sign their security forms. So please reiterate to your staff that they have to sign into Tom's at least once before testing starts to sign these forms. And that's from the front door, not from the test administration side. Other staff such as custodians, instructional aides, therapists, or anyone else who will have access to secure materials or will assist as proctors but do not need a Tom's role must sign a non-Tom's user security affidavit. And those affidavits can be found on the CAASPP website at the link in the resource guide. There are resources available to help you in the process on the Tom's Resources webpage, including adding and managing users one by one video, adding and managing users by batch file video, and user roles overview from Tom's user guide. The links are in your resource guide. We have one last thing to do before we get to all your questions, and that is to assign you homework. I promise that we are not assigning busy work. Instead, we want you to focus on the tasks that have some next steps for you to accomplish. We want you to do 3 things first. Find out who the test site coordinators are at your school and or district. Second, find out who loaded users into Tom's last year. How was it done? Was it done by individual or batch upload? And lastly, think about the staff at your school and the level of access they will need in the system. What role will they serve? Now we want to answer any questions you might have. We'll spend the next part of the training answering your questions, so let's start with questions that have already come in. Please send in your additional questions by entering them into the Q&A box.
Yeah, I only see 3 so far, so I'll take 2, but please keep them coming. We would love to take this time to answer your questions. Okay, so I know it was asked early in the training about when these new coordinator convenings will be. Paul was nice enough to pop the dates into the chat or the Q&A for us. We will have one in Fresno on September 8th, one in Sacramento on September 12th, and one in Los Angeles on September 15th. So save the date. Keep your eye out for the invite to register. We're sending it out to people who are flagged in the system as a new coordinator, and then we will start sending it out a little more widely to give everyone a chance to register. But we are limiting registration to folks who have been in their role for 3 years or less. This is really just a chance for brand new coordinators or people still getting acclimated to this role to come together. We promise there won't be any new information shared. You're not going to hear anything that no one else is going to hear outside the room. It's a chance for new people to come together and build their networks and meet other new coordinators. I also got a question about how can I find step-by-step directions to assign these class rosters to teachers in the California Educator Reporting System. And there are quite a few ways to go about getting that information. So Stephen, I'm going to steal the screen share just real quick and then I'll give it right back to you. So on the CAASPP and ELPAC website, you can go to the Training and Communication tab, and then from here to Upcoming and On-Demand Trainings. And if you open up the training opportunities in August, we've got the Introduction to SIRS for test coordinators and administrators. We got 2 dates for you, one in August, one in October. You can come spend 3 hours with me and our excellent SIRS trainers and learn all about how to roster students to teachers in SIRS. So that's option number 1. Option number 2 is if you go to this on-demand training module section, again, of the training and communication section of the navigation bar, upcoming and on-demand trainings page, click on on-demand trainings. And down here we have the Introduction to SIRS for test coordinators and administrators micro-learning videos. So maybe you're more of an on-demand asynchronous learning type of person. You don't have 3 hours to spend in a training. We've got you. So this is a series of micro-learning videos. You can watch the full training start to finish, or you can jump straight to that section on managing student groups, which we also call rostering, and watch just those videos. The third option for you is to go to the Resources tab of the ribbon, go to SIRS Resources, it's the first one here under Reporting, and on the SIRS Resources page is the SIRS User Guide. That is also going to have information for you about how to manage student groups, also called rostering in SIRS. So 3 ways that you can access that information about rostering. All right, Stephen, I'll let you take the next question.
Thank you, Nikki. Paul, do you have a copy of the resource guide for June 12th, 2025 webinar number 1, Initial ELPAC and Preparing for Summit of ELPAC? Is there a link that you can drop?
Yeah, we do. And actually just where Nikki was at, if you go to the upcoming and right there, so for Candy, yeah, if you click on that box right there, and then you scroll down to new coordinator trainings, 2025, and you'll see the very first one. And right there, you should be able to access the PowerPoint for attendees, the resource guide, and the video recording.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Paul.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Nikki.
I'm going to only guess at this. Nikki, if you have a definitive answer, there's a question about whether when you get the welcome email, does the 30-minute window start when they open the email or when it's sent? It's when it's sent, I believe. Yeah. But you can, when you're doing a login, you don't actually even need the email to trigger a repeat email. You just go to Tom's CAASPP.elpac.org, hit the Tom's button, and then hit the Tom's button again. And at that login, there's a reset password button. Let me share screen. Oh,
Oh,
actually,
I'm
that's
sharing. I
Nikki,
got
you're
you.
doing it.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. I'll back
It's
up a
right
step.
below the password.
Sorry. Yeah. So just so we have it screen share at the same time, like Stephen was saying, CAASPP and ELPAC website, Tom's tile on the homepage, Tom's button, reset password link. We'll
Yeah,
reset it.
that'll trigger it.
I don't think I've ever gotten to that email within the 30 minutes that I've been allotted every year when I'm designated. So no worries. If you
The
know,
way
if
to
you're
do that, Nikki, is and I just cut you off, but I'm sorry.
all
The
good, all good.
way the way to get everybody on the same page and get that email and done within 30 minutes is to do it during a training. So if everybody's in the same room and you send it out while they're in the same room with their laptops open, then everybody just does it right then. This is amazing. There are no questions. Everybody's got this.
There are none.
Oh,
Okay,
what?
so the one did just come in. What triggers the email to send? So that's when users are loaded into Tom's. And as Stephen talked about, there are a couple different ways to do that, individually or in batch files. But as those new user profiles are created in Tom's, that triggers this email that gets sent off to them, letting them know they've been assigned a role in Tom's, and click a link into, you know, all that stuff. And that is where that 30 minutes comes in. All right.
Yeah, looks like that's pretty much it, huh?
Should we wrap this party up?
We could wrap it up. I mean, the gift of time for sure.
Magic words. Let's give
yeah.
you some time back in your day.
That's right. Well, thank you everyone for submitting those questions, and thank you, Stephen and Nikki, for an awesome presentation. And yeah, we just have a couple of more announcements, and then we will wrap it up. And hopefully, you have a great afternoon. Cool. If Nikki or Stephen could please put the upcoming slide.
I
Yeah.
got the slide deck.
Wonderful. Cool. All right. To wrap it up, we'd like to recommend some upcoming training opportunities. And first up, we have the new coordinator trainings, right? And July 17th, we're going to have the topic of receiving results. And then in August 28th, we will cover assessment systems and TOMS. And on September 18th, we're going to be covering accessibility. So the links to register are in your resource guide. And then we have the AIM meetings, which is the Assessment and Accountability Information Meetings. These two sessions will provide coordinators with the latest updates and important information on California assessments and accountability systems. Don't want to miss that. Each session will focus on specific topic and will be delivered virtually. And a list of session topics can also be found in your resource guide. And then we have the coffee sessions. These virtual sessions hosted by the CDE and ETS, they offer opportunities for LAA staff to ask questions and get answers about assessments, trainings, resources, and more. They are held monthly for most of the year, with the next one, it's scheduled on July 8th. Again, the link is in the resource guide to register for all of these. And lastly, we want to call out the California Assessment Conference. This will be the 7th annual CAC, and it will take place November 12th through the 14th, 2025 at the Riverside Convention Center in Riverside, California. This conference is designed specifically for classroom educators, site administrators, assessment coordinators, and others. So please help us spread the word. More information can be found at the link to the CAC website in your resource guide. And that brings us to the end of our training. We hope that the information that was shared today was helpful and timely. As always, we want to remind you that you're not alone in this work. You can reach out through the vast networks of coordinators in similar roles throughout the state, your LEA success agent, and you always have staff at the CDE ready and available to answer your questions. Again, we have a post-evaluation at the end of this webinar. If you could please take a couple of minutes and provide us with some feedback. We really appreciate it. And with that, on behalf of CDE, my colleagues, Nikki Antonovich, Stephen Bartlett, we thank you for joining us, and we hope to see you at the next one. Have a great afternoon, everyone. Take good care.